300,000 years before Christ, humanity lived in a world where every sunset brought terror. Our ancestors were not the fearsome hunters we imagine, but vulnerable prey cowering in caves and huddling together against creatures that ruled the night. Across the grasslands of Africa, through the forests of Europe, and along the valleys of Asia, early human bands of 20 to 30 individuals faced an enemy they could never defeat through strength alone, the predators that could smell them coming from over a mile away. Picture this if you can. You are crouched in a cave entrance with your family group as darkness falls. You possess the most sophisticated brain that has ever evolved on Earth. You can plan, communicate, reason. You understand cause and effect. You know that leopards hunt at dusk, that lions prowl in darkness, that hyenas gather in packs that can overwhelm any defense. And with all your intelligence, all your planning, all your tool-making capability, you cannot protect the children sleeping behind you, because the enemy finds you by scent, and you cannot stop smelling like prey. This was the fundamental problem of early human existence. We had climbed down from the trees, stood upright, freed our hands for tool use, developed big brains capable of abstract thought. We had become, potentially, the most dangerous animal on the planet, but we could not survive the night. Archaeological evidence from sites across 3 continents tells the same grim story. Human remains from 300,000 to 50,000 years before Christ show trauma patterns consistent with predator attacks, puncture wounds matching saber-toothed cat canines, crushed skulls consistent with cave bear jaws, drag marks where bodies were pulled from sleeping areas. For 250,000 years, humanity was on the menu. The statistics are staggering when you really think about them. Analysis of fossil remains suggests that predation accounted for as much as 20 to 30% of all deaths in early human populations. 1 in 4 or 5 people did not die of disease, starvation, or old age. They were eaten. Imagine living in a society where everyone you know has lost family members to predators, where every evening brings genuine terror, where the darkness is not an inconvenience but a mortal threat that you absolutely cannot overcome through any means at your disposal. Early humans tried everything. They built barriers of thorns and stones at cave entrances. They posted sentries through the night, though exhausted guards often fell asleep and entire groups were slaughtered. They moved constantly, trying to stay ahead of predator territories, but predators are territorial and opportunistic. New areas meant new threats. Some groups tried climbing into trees at night, returning to ancestral safety, but leopards are better climbers, and found them anyway. Weapon technology meant nothing when you could not see the enemy approaching, and when your scent advertised your position hours in advance. The physiological evidence is fascinating and disturbing. Studies of modern humans show we possess innate fear responses to predator stimuli that other primates lack. Show a human infant images of snakes or spiders or large carnivores, and their stress responses spike immediately, no learning required. This is genetic memory. Evolution wired into our DNA the absolute terror our ancestors felt every single night for hundreds of thousands of years. That knot you feel in your stomach when you hear something moving in darkness? That is 250,000 years of your ancestors screaming at you to be afraid. And then, somewhere around 50,000 years before Christ, someone had an insane idea. We do not know who. We will never know their name. But somebody noticed something about fire that everyone had missed, despite using fire for hundreds of thousands of years. Fire made light and heat and cooked food. Everyone knew that. But fire also made smoke. And smoke moved. It drifted on air currents. It spread through spaces. It created barriers that were not solid but might as well have been to any creature that relied on scent to hunt. Here is what they figured out. Position fires upwind of your sleeping area. Not inside the cave where smoke accumulates and suffocates you outside. Carefully placed so prevailing winds carry smoke past your position. The smoke creates an invisible wall. Predators approaching from downwind smell nothing. Your scent signature disappears into smoke confusion. The chemical compounds in wood smoke, phenols, aldehydes, organic acids actively interfere with olfactory processing. You become undetectable to creatures that could track you across 5 miles of open terrain. The first night that worked must have been miraculous. Imagine being the person who positioned those fires and told everyone to sleep while smoke drifted over them. The courage that required. Because if you were wrong, everyone dies. But then morning came, and everyone was alive, and the predators that should have found you during the night never even approached. You had discovered something that changed everything. The idea spread not through writing or formal teaching, but through desperate imitation. A neighboring tribe notices your people survive nights that should kill them. They watch. They experiment. Within generations, smoke circles became standard practice across human populations throughout Africa, then Europe, then Asia. Archaeological sites from this period show distinctive patterns: rings of fire pits arranged around living spaces, massive ash accumulations from sustained burning, and most tellingly, dramatically reduced evidence of predator attacks on human remains. But the smoke idea was just the beginning. Once humans could survive nights, once we could sleep without terror, once we could stay in one place long enough to accumulate resources, everything changed. Populations began growing, settlements became semi-permanent, trade networks formed, social complexity exploded, and humanity did something no prey species had ever done before. We went on offense. The predators that hunted us for millions of years were about to face an enemy that no longer fled in terror, that no longer accepted darkness as the domain of death. We were about to become the most dangerous thing that had ever evolved on Earth. And smoke, invisible, intangible smoke, was the weapon that would turn prey into predator. But how exactly did that happen? How did smoke transform humanity from cowering victims to apex predators who would hunt our former hunters to extinction? That is where this story gets truly remarkable. The transformation began around 50,000 years before Christ, though the exact moment is lost to time. In caves scattered across what would become southern France, a desperate situation drove someone to attempt the impossible. Let us call him the first fire keeper, a tribal leader whose family had been decimated by cave lion attacks over 3 brutal seasons. He had watched his children dragged into darkness. He had found his mate's torn body in the morning. He had seen half his tribe destroyed by predators that hunted them with casual efficiency. And in his grief and rage, he made an observation that would alter human destiny. Fire itself was not new. Humans had controlled fire for perhaps 400,000 years, using it for warmth, cooking, and light. But the first firekeeper saw something different. He watched how predators approached lightning-struck trees that still smoldered days after the storm passed, how they came close, then circled, then retreated, confused and unwilling to enter the smoke clouds that drifted through the forest. He saw wolves track a deer to within 100 feet of a smoking tree trunk, then lose the scent entirely and abandon the hunt. He witnessed a cave lion approach his own cave entrance where cooking fires produced light smoke, then veer away as thicker smoke from green wood briefly obscured the opening. His idea was brilliant and insane in equal measure. Humans had always tried to minimize smoke from fires, seeking dry wood that burned clean and bright. The first firekeeper proposed the opposite, deliberately creating thick, continuous, choking smoke, specifically to mask human scent. Not just any smoke, but dense clouds that would surround the tribe's shelter like a protective fog, maintained throughout the night when predators hunted most actively. It violated everything the tribe understood about fire safety. It revealed their location from miles away through visible smoke columns. It required enormous resources to maintain, and it seemed like madness to people who had spent generations trying to avoid detection. The tribe resisted. Elders argued it would attract rather than repel danger. Hunters claimed the smoke would reveal them to enemies. Others feared the spirits would be angered by such unnatural fire use. But the first firekeeper was beyond caring about tradition. He had nothing left to lose. On a moonless night, when the tribe prepared for another terror-filled vigil, he built fires around the cave entrance using green wood, damp moss, and aromatic plants, creating a smoke barrier so thick it made breathing difficult. The tribe watched in horror, certain he had doomed them all. Then something extraordinary happened. Predators approached as they did every night, cave lions, hyenas, wolves drawn by the smoke column visible from miles away. But as they entered the smoke radius, their behavior changed completely. They circled the perimeter, confused and agitated. They tested the smoke barrier from multiple angles, backing away each time. They could see the cave entrance through gaps in the smoke. They could hear humans moving inside, but they could not pinpoint location through scent. The smoke created a confusion, radius where predators' primary tracking sense became useless. After an hour of frustrated circling, the predators abandoned the hunt and moved on. For the first time in tribal memory, the night passed without attack. The proof demanded repetition. For 3 consecutive nights, the first firekeeper maintained his smoke barriers while the tribe slept in unprecedented peace. But the strategy carried enormous costs and risks that required systematic solutions. Smoke fires needed constant feeding with green wood and damp materials that produced maximum smoke rather than efficient burning. Wind shifts could disperse the smoke and leave the tribe exposed. Rain could extinguish fires unless carefully protected. And maintaining smoke throughout the 12-hour night required someone to stay awake feeding fires, while others slept, creating humanity's first specialized night watch role. The first firekeeper established the smoke vigil, a rotating duty where young warriors tended fires from sunset to sunrise. This was not punishment but sacred responsibility. The smoke keeper controlled the tribe's survival. He needed to understand wind patterns to position fires correctly. He needed knowledge of which woods produced the densest smoke: pine for thick white clouds, oak for heavy lingering haze, aromatic cedar that not only masked scent but actively repelled insects. He needed to read weather signs to prepare for rain or wind shifts. This body of knowledge became the first specialized expertise beyond hunting and gathering, the first human technology that required dedicated study and practice to master. As weeks became months and months became years, the technique refined. The tribe discovered that mixing certain aromatic plants into fires, sage, sweetgrass, juniper, created smoke that seemed to repel predators more effectively than wood smoke alone. They learned that smoke worked best when produced from multiple fire sources surrounding their shelter, creating overlapping protection zones. They found that maintaining a base of smoldering coals allowed quick smoke generation without waiting for wood to catch. And most importantly, they recognized that smoke created a secure radius of approximately 100 to 200 feet, humanity's first defensible territory, the first space where humans could gather safely after dark. Word of this innovation spread through the most powerful force in Paleolithic society survivor testimony. Neighboring tribes saw the smoke columns. They investigated. They found a tribe sleeping peacefully through the night, while predators paced outside the smoke barrier. The technique spread not through conquest or trade, but through desperate imitation. Within 5,000 years, smoke protection had reached tribes across 3 continents. Each group adapted the core principle to local conditions. African savanna tribes used dried elephant dung mixed with grass to produce thick, long-lasting smoke. European forest dwellers preferred resinous pine boughs. Asian steppe nomads developed portable smoke carriers, smoldering bundles of moss and bark carried in leather pouches that could generate protective smoke within minutes of making camp. The psychological transformation was profound. For the first time in human history, people fell asleep without terror. Children played at night within the smoke circle. Elders told stories that lasted past sunset. The constant hypervigilance that had defined human existence for hundreds of thousands of years began to ease. And in that new security, something remarkable emerged. Humanity began to dream not just of surviving the night, but of dominating the creatures that had hunted them. Think about what this meant. For 250,000 years, humans went to sleep every night knowing they might not wake up. Parents lay awake listening for sounds in darkness, knowing that at any moment a cave lion could drag away their children. Every sunset brought dread. Every morning brought relief mixed with grief for those who did not survive. This was not occasional danger, this was the fundamental condition of human existence. And now, for the first time, it was ending. The social changes rippled outward. Tribes that previously numbered 20 to 30 people, small enough to hide, mobile enough to flee, began growing. 50 people gathered around the smoke circles, then 70, then 100. These larger groups required new forms of organization. Someone needed to coordinate wood gathering to maintain the smoke fires. Someone needed to teach newcomers the smoke techniques. Someone needed to resolve disputes between families now living in close proximity. Leadership became more complex. Roles specialized. Society became more intricate because smoke had created the security necessary for complexity to develop. But the most significant change was psychological. Humans who no longer feared the night began thinking differently about predators. Instead of prey avoiding hunters, humans started asking a revolutionary question. If smoke protects us, could it help us hunt them? And that question, that shift from defensive to offensive thinking, was about to transform humanity from vulnerable prey into the apex predator that would dominate Earth. Between 40,000 and 10,000 years before Christ, smoke transformed from defensive technology into offensive weapon, and humanity transformed from prey into the most dangerous predator Earth had ever known. The revolution did not happen overnight, but through countless small innovations by tribes scattered across continents, each discovering new applications for the smoke techniques that now defined human society. The first offensive use emerged from a simple observation. If smoke confused predators approaching human camps, it could also mask humans approaching predator dens. Hunter bands in Ice Age Europe began carrying portable smoke sources, smoldering bundles of bark and moss that could be fanned into thick smoke on demand. When approaching dangerous prey or entering territory where cave lions denned, hunters generated smoke clouds that concealed their approach while disrupting predators' ability to track them. This allowed humans to claim prey kills before scavengers arrived, to hunt in territories previously too dangerous to enter, and most significantly, to begin hunting the predators themselves. The transformation from prey to predator happened with shocking speed once smoke provided tactical advantage. Within 5,000 years, a geological eye blink, humanity went from cowering in caves to systematically exterminating every major predator species that had terrorized our ancestors for millions of years. This was not gradual adaptation. This was warfare. The earliest evidence of organized predator hunting using smoke tactics appears around 45,000 years before Christ at sites across southern Europe and northern Africa. What makes these sites remarkable is not the presence of predator remains humans had occasionally killed attacking animals in desperate self-defense for hundreds of thousands of years. What makes them remarkable is the scale and systematic nature of the kills. At one site in what is now Spain, archaeologists found remains of 17 cave lions killed in a single event, all showing similar trauma patterns consistent with coordinated spear attacks. 17. That is not defense. That is extermination. Here is how it worked. Human hunting parties tracked predator groups to their dens, caves, ravines, dense thickets where the animals slept during daylight hours. The hunters positioned themselves carefully upwind and generated massive amounts of smoke using green wood, damp vegetation, anything that produced thick, choking clouds. The smoke flowed into the den spaces, and here is the critical insight. The hunters were not trying to kill with smoke. They were trying to panic. Predators rely on their senses, vision, hearing, but especially smell. Smoke overwhelms all three simultaneously. It obscures vision. It creates disorienting noise as it rushes through confined spaces. And most importantly, it obliterates scent information that predators use to navigate, identify threats, and coordinate with pack members. A cave lion emerging from smoke into daylight is effectively blind, deaf, and confused, stumbling into waiting spear lines held by hunters who are positioned, prepared, and working together with tactical coordination. The psychological reversal this represented cannot be overstated. For 250,000 years, predators hunted humans using superior senses to locate, track, and ambush us. Smoke neutralized that advantage completely. Suddenly the hunters were the hunted. Suddenly humans were the ones tracking them to sleeping areas. Suddenly humans were the ones attacking with coordinated tactics, while predators fled in panic. Every ancient dynamic reversed in a single generation. The great cave bear hunts of 20,000 years before Christ exemplify this transformation. Cave bears were enormous males weighing 2,000 pounds, standing 12 feet tall, possessing strength that could snap a human spine with a single blow. For hundreds of thousands of years, Humans avoided cave bears absolutely. But smoke changed the equation. Hunter parties began deliberately targeting cave bear dens in early spring when the animals emerged from hibernation, sluggish and vulnerable. Hunters positioned themselves upwind and generated massive smoke clouds that flowed into the cave entrances. The smoke did not kill the bears but confused and panicked them, driving them out of dens into waiting spear lines. Within 5,000 years, cave bears were extinct across Europe, not from climate change, but from systematic human extermination enabled by smoke tactics. The same pattern repeated with every major predator species. Dire wolves, which had hunted in packs across North America for millions of years, disappeared around 10,000 years before Christ. Cave lions, the massive cats that dominated European forests, vanished around the same time. Saber-toothed cats, which had existed for 42 million years, went extinct around 11,000 years before Christ. The correlation with human smoke technology is unmistakable. Humans did not merely defend against these creatures, they hunted them to extinction with brutal efficiency once smoke provided tactical advantage. But the smoke revolution extended far beyond predator hunting. The innovation enabled territorial consolidation that transformed human social organization. Previously, tribes constantly migrated to avoid predator-saturated areas and to follow game herds. Smoke protection allowed tribes to defend fixed locations, which enabled resource accumulation impossible for nomadic groups. Archaeological sites from this era show the first semi-permanent human settlements, not yet agriculture-based villages, but seasonal camps repeatedly occupied over decades. These sites feature distinctive characteristics. Multiple fire pits arranged in protective circles, massive accumulations of wood ash, and stored firewood supplies representing labor investment possible only for groups confident they would remain in the location. Population growth followed security. Genetic evidence shows human populations began expanding rapidly around 40,000 years before Christ, precisely when smoke technology became widespread. Tribes that previously maintained 20 to 30 individuals to minimize scent signatures now grew to 50, 70, 100 people. These larger groups formed around the smoke circles, creating humanity's first true communities, where multiple family units gathered in sustained proximity. The social complexity this enabled, shared labor, specialized roles, complex kinship networks, collective decision-making laid foundations for everything that followed. The role of smokemaster emerged as a position of tremendous power and prestige. These individuals possessed knowledge that meant life or death for entire communities. They understood which woods produced optimal smoke for different conditions. They could read wind patterns and predict weather changes hours in advance. They knew the sacred locations where the best smoking materials grew. This knowledge became closely guarded, passed down through rigorous apprenticeships where elders taught chosen successors through stories, songs, and hands-on practice over many years. Smokemasters often led tribes not through physical strength but through their irreplaceable expertise. Regional smoke cultures developed distinctive characteristics. In the forests of what would become Germany and Poland, tribes used dense pine smoke and developed techniques for smoking meat that could preserve food for months. In the Mediterranean regions, aromatic herbs like rosemary and thyme were mixed into smoke fires, creating signature scents by which tribes identified themselves. On the African savannas, tribes used acacia wood and developed mobile smoke techniques that protected them, while following migrating herds. These variations created the first human cultural diversity based on technological adaptation to local environments. But smoke also transformed human versus human conflict in ways both ingenious and terrible. The first recorded evidence of smoke use in human warfare appears around 15,000 years before Christ at multiple sites across Europe and Asia. Tribes began using smoke to mask troop movements, to create confusion during raids, to signal allies across distances, and to mark territory boundaries. One particularly sophisticated technique involved generating false smoke signals to draw rival tribes into ambushes, using humanity's own protective technology as bait. This was psychological warfare of remarkable sophistication. For Paleolithic peoples, the Great Smoke Battle, a composite event reconstructed from multiple archaeological sites dating around 12,000 years before Christ, exemplifies smoke warfare's evolution. At a contested river valley in what is now southern France, two large tribal confederations clashed over prime territory. One group generated massive smoke screens at dawn, using the morning mist and their smoke to become virtually invisible. They approached to within spear range before the opposing tribe detected their presence. The attack broke the defenders' line, and the territory changed hands. The victors attributed their success to superior smoke craft, and the story spread across hundreds of miles, inspiring other tribes to refine their own smoke techniques. Trade networks emerged specifically around smoking materials. Tribes living near cedar forests traded aromatic wood to plains tribes who had only grass and sage. Coastal groups traded salt for smoke-preserving meat to inland tribes who traded back smoked fish. Certain plants that produced exceptional smoke sweetgrass from specific meadows, particular juniper species, became valuable commodities, moving hundreds of miles through exchange networks. This was humanity's first long-distance trade based not on food or tools, but on technological materials. By 10,000 years before Christ, when the last ice age ended and agriculture began, humanity had completely reversed the ancient dynamic. The creatures that hunted us for millions of years were extinct or restricted to territories humans chose not to occupy. Smoke had provided the invisible shield behind which humanity transformed from cowering prey to dominant apex predator, from scattered bands to growing communities, from reactive victims to strategic hunters. One insane idea had changed everything. But the story does not end there. Because smoke became so deeply embedded in human consciousness that it shaped how civilizations developed, how religions formed, how languages evolved, and how we still behave today in ways we do not even recognize. That legacy burns through every aspect of human existence. The smoke techniques that saved humanity from extinction did not disappear when agriculture replaced hunting or when cities rose from the dust of ancient river valleys. Instead, smoke became woven so deeply into human culture, spirituality, and psychology that 50,000 years later, we still light fires not from necessity but from a soul-deep need to connect with something ancestral. As civilizations emerged across Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, between 5,000 and 3,000 years before Christ, smoke transcended its practical origins to become sacred. Every ancient culture, developing independently on different continents, made smoke central to religious practice. The Sumerians built ziggurats with eternal flames at their peaks, smoke rising toward the heavens as offerings to their gods. The Hebrews constructed elaborate sacrificial systems where smoke carried prayers upward. The word for sacrifice in Hebrew literally means to bring near through smoke. Egyptian temples burned frankincense and myrrh, filling sacred spaces with aromatic smoke believed to purify and protect. Zoroastrian Persians built fire temples where flames burned continuously for centuries, tended by priests whose primary duty was maintaining sacred smoke. Chinese emperors performed elaborate smoke ceremonies at the Temple of Heaven, believing smoke connected earthly and divine realms. These practices appeared independently because they emerged from shared human experience. For 40,000 years, smoke meant safety. It meant survival through darkness. It meant community gathering in protected circles. These associations became embedded in human psychology so deeply that smoke automatically triggered feelings of security, belonging, and home across all cultures and time periods. When ancient peoples sought to honor their gods, they instinctively used smoke not because someone taught them, but because smoke touched their consciousness at levels beyond rational thought. The military applications evolved with increasingly deadly sophistication. At the Battle of Marathon, in 490 years before Christ, Persian forces used smoke screens to obscure their movements during the approach to Greek lines. Roman legions employed smoke tactics during sieges, burning wet wood and green vegetation to create thick clouds that concealed siege tower approaches. During the siege of Tyre in 332 years before Christ, Alexander the Great's forces used smoke to mask naval movements and create confusion among defenders. Medieval armies refined these techniques further, developing specialized units responsible for generating tactical smoke during battles. By the time gunpowder appeared in the 13th century after Christ, smoke had been a military weapon for 15,000 years. But smoke's domestic legacy proved equally transformative. The hearth fire became the literal and symbolic center of human homes across every culture. The Latin word focus originally meant fireplace, before evolving to mean center of attention or activity, because the fire was where families gathered, where decisions were made, where stories were told. The English word hearth came to mean both the fireplace and the home itself, so intertwined were the concepts. Smoke drying of meat and fish enabled food preservation that made sedentary agriculture possible. Smoke curing of leather created durable materials for clothing, shelter, and tools. Early metallurgy depended on precise smoke and fire control to reach temperatures necessary for smelting copper and bronze. One innovation cascaded into countless others. The language we speak today carries smoke's legacy in unexpected ways. Companion derives from Latin words meaning with bread, referring to people who gathered around fires to share food. Curfew comes from French couvre-feu, meaning cover fire, the evening time when fires were banked for the night. Dozens of idioms reference smoke and fire because these elements were so central to human experience. Where there is smoke, there is fire, smoke and mirrors, going up in smoke, smoke signals. We describe pleasant company as warm, difficult situations as getting burned, and anger as fuming, all metaphors born from millennia around fires. Archaeological discoveries continue revealing smoke's centrality to human development. In 1994, researchers exploring Chauvet Cave in southern France found 30,000-year-old paintings of animals covering the walls, some of the oldest known human art. But they also found something else. Deliberate smoke stains arranged in patterns around the cave entrance, evidence of systematic smoke fire positioning for protection. The artists who created those magnificent paintings worked under smoke's protective veil. At Lascaux Cave, dating to 17,000 years before Christ, similar smoke patterns appear. The charcoal used in the paintings came from smoke fires. The gatherings where art was created happened in smoke-protected spaces. Culture itself was born in smoke circles. Modern humans maintain smoke practices that have no practical purpose but satisfy deep psychological needs. We gather around campfires on beaches and in backyards, despite having central heating and electric lights. We find comfort in scented candles that recreate fire's ambience without its heat. We pay premium prices for smoked foods when smoking is no longer necessary for preservation. We use incense in religious and spiritual practices across dozens of faiths. We build expensive fireplaces into homes that have perfect climate control. These behaviors make no rational sense unless we understand that we are acting on genetic memories 50,000 years deep. The modern military still teaches smoke and obscurement tactics as fundamental battlefield doctrine. Electronic warfare using jamming and deception to confuse enemy sensors follows the exact strategic principle the first firekeeper discovered. Control what the enemy can detect, and you control the battlefield. Cybersecurity experts fight to mask digital signatures and control information flow. The terminology has changed from scent and smoke to electromagnetic spectrum and data packets, but the underlying strategy remains identical to what saved humanity from extinction. Think about the last time you sat around a fire with friends or family. Maybe it was a backyard fire pit, maybe a beach bonfire, maybe just candles on a dinner table. You felt something, did you not? A sense of comfort, of connection, of being home. That feeling is not random. That feeling is your DNA, remembering the nights when smoke meant the difference between life and death, when fire circles defined the boundary between safety and terror, when gathering around flames with your tribe meant you survived another day. We are, all of us, children of smoke. Our ancestors faced a world where every sunset brought genuine terror, where predators that ruled the night found us by scent no matter where we hid, where intelligence and tools meant nothing against creatures designed by evolution to hunt and kill us. They should have gone extinct. We should not exist. But someone had an insane idea about using smoke to mask scent. And that idea changed everything. In our climate-controlled homes, protected by locks and alarms from any genuine threats, we still light candles on birthday cakes and gather around fire pits as darkness falls. We do this not from necessity, but from something deeper, an echo of the nights when smoke meant survival, when fire circles defined the boundary between safety and terror, when one person's insane idea transformed humanity from prey to predator. Every flame we light, every wisp of smoke we create, carries the ghost of our ancestors' desperate vigil. We survived because someone thought the impossible and made it real. We survived because smoke became our invisible shield. We survived, and we remember. In every fire we light, in every smoky scent that brings unexpected comfort, in every gathering around flames we remember. We are the species that turned smoke into salvation, that transformed weakness into strength, that refused to accept our place as prey, and that, ultimately, is the story of humanity itself.